pleasure to see you all here. And it is my utmost pleasure to be here standing in these two shoes. So, trivia, what is the month March significant for? March Madness, St. Patrick's Day. But for us as spiritualists, it is famously reverent to us as celebrating the onset of history of spiritualism. So it's very significant. And if you were here last Sunday, you had a wonderful speaker talk about the historical aspects of it. And I'm preempting this. On Wednesday, there's going to be a beautiful presentation from NSAC available online for you to engage with the services. So if you have internet, you have Zoom, you should be able to find that information through here or through online. Is going to be a wonderful array of presentations. So just preemptively mentioning that. But March is special for me because I'm a spiritualist. And to become a spiritualist, I had to grow fond of it in some ways, if you could say that. So to tell the beautiful story, it will always be a fascinating thing, how to approach it, what vantage point you get to see that. And I believe, honestly, that coming into spiritualism has allowed me to have the ability to shift my perspective to look at the same stories, same information, but from a different vantage point. I have the ability to have a small degree of change that allows me to see the same story differently, right? But that's my own wonderment. As we explore this conversation, you have to remember, as I'm speaking to you, these words are not just for you, these are for me as well. So we go through this beautiful journey of the history of spiritualism, the ABCs and the XYZs, but we're not going to be talking about ABCs today or the XYZs, but we will talk about STUVW. Fantastic, right? So the exploration is, how do you see the same alphabet, right? The story of our spiritualism started by Knox and Raps and creating the alphabet through the Fox sister, and of course there are 26 letters, but we will talk about S, T, U, V, and W. Because in the journey from ABC to XYZ, those are also there. So we will work through that. So just participate with me for a moment. So why STUVW? And as I was sitting in my chair this morning wondering what it's going to be about, how everything's going to come into fruition, STUVW was just coming up. And sometimes I have to be attentive to what somebody else is speaking in a point of reference. So I will break it down for STUV. There could be so many things. And you know, your imagination, your mind is free to create your own abbreviation or acronym to it. But spiritualism thanks you, volunteer workers. So you have to understand, you know, in this journey of spiritualism, when it started, and even before the advent of modern day spiritualism, this work was voluntary because it was an unknown skill set. People developed their personalities and their skill set to get to wherever they are recognized, right? It was not like, this was not like a professional thing until modern day, even further than that. So everybody would sit in a circle, sit in a circle, and they would develop their S skill set that revolved around spirit communication, another S. So just wordplay here at the moment, but that was the whole point and idea. There was nothing much to do but to sit around when the work is done, or you're sort of winding down through your hard day's work, and you would sit and commune and talk and tell stories and grow from there. And still to this day, if I go back in time, where I grew up in India, we used to have blackouts, and we got so used to it, we knew it is going to be blackout in another 10 minutes. So you prepare, candles are ready, flashlights are ready, food is ready, because you know, you make the best of it. And when it's all done and the power is still out, then there's storytelling. It's catching up. It's a gentle version of gossip in some ways, but it's catching up. What went on, right? But imagine through the discovery of our spiritualist foundations, all these things were already happening. You know, That's how the communication was already in place, through telling stories or sharing the stories through the day of what went on. And right now we have mastered the skill set of communication in 26 words, 10 words, one line, one alphabet, one smiley, one emoticon, and so forth. So we're mastering, we're reducing our vocabulary in a drastic way. V for vocabulary. So you have to understand where we're moving into this journey of spiritualism. I don't know, we might want to think of taking sign language because we may forget how to say or pronounce words, but sign language would work. Another S, because spirit does communicate through signs and symbols, which becomes a part of an interesting language, right? And for me, it is just a journey, so I have to be attentive because my symbols, even my personal symbols, don't remain the same all the time. They are always evolving. Something's going on that changes that perspective. But the big thank you is to all those volunteers that gave time to developing this so that we were at some point in millions of attendance as members, followers of spiritualism. Some were dedicated to it, some were just following it because it was a big movement, but that is a part of life. If you have something to present, if you have something to offer to the people as a comfort, healing, a place of wonderment, a place of excitement, you do develop that following and the following principle, so the volume adds up in that aspect. But the big thank you is to all the unsung heroes, you know, the Fox family and the other prominent figures in our history of spiritualism are noted personalities. They're noted personalities. They are writers, they are theologians, they are philosophers that have worked with spiritualist philosophy. These are noted people. But what about the you? And I think this is the big part of the STUVW, because you is in the middle of it. And you make a big difference. And you are just as important as me standing here. Because if you were not here, perhaps I would be not here. So it's a relationship mechanics that we create no matter where we are. So you have to understand you is very important. And I was just, as I was driving, somebody else was here, very funny voice or funny conversation was going on. If there is a single you, it's a good thing. And I was like, how? True, success, they're all single yous are there in those words. Now in tumultuous, there are two yous. So whenever the two yous come together, there is a need for synchronizing the energies. There's a need of understanding where the one you is, then the other you is, trying to create a harmony. Or you create a harmony within yourself that creates the harmony between multiple yous is there. So part of me was just exciting. You know, this is an intelligent, whoever's here is working intelligently. So I was just at ease. It's not my mind. That's not how normally I would take it, but I was just surrendering, another S, to trust, T, that was being given to me. So perhaps I would say Spirit was trying to teach you, me, to present whatever needs to be coming forward. So I was just humorously engaging with that. But this volunteerism and you is a big thing for me. And that's what I have understood in my journey over 16, 17 years in spiritualism. First thing I will say one more time, I had to change my religion. And that was a big thing for me. It was almost like undoing my knots in understanding where I was. So I was undoing my Methodist Christian upbringing, belief system, trusting the programming that was there in my mind, to wrap around like, oh, I can be just directly connected to God, the spirit world, the infinite wisdom, infinite intelligence. I don't have to channel this way or that way. Now, the part was me, as am I abandoning something, as am I giving up something, is there is a part of like, am I being, you know, not honest to what I was being brought up to. But the awareness was, I was really stepping into the oneness of everything. Because spiritualism honestly is classified as a religion, philosophy, and science. But when it comes to religion, it's more of a global, because all the religions, as I keep harping, has death and dying. No religion is void from it. In every religion there is death and dying. So anywhere where human beings are embracing a religion. So spiritualism coexists with everybody, all the religions. It embraces everything. So the philosophy of life is continuity after death. And the part for me as it was evolving, I had to really embrace on hard days, you know. The Lent is coming, and how am I going to approach this? And I'm being trained in a certain way. And the Ash Wednesday is going to come. The Palm Sunday is going to come. And in my own journey, just to push myself, I've had 40 days of fasting myself to just prove a point that I can do it. I don't want to follow the preacher who talks about it and then has a party. So there's a part of me was that. I wanted to push myself, and I've always been somewhat like that. Like, can I push the grain here on my own? And then they would be upset with me. It's like, well, you know, he's a young child or a young boy. How is he pushing himself? Well, that's my own fun to test myself. And that's another T in the STVUVW is, see, trick. So the T is to test, because in spiritualism, as we stand up here in front of the congregation or people for demonstrating the continuity of life, or private readings, every sitting is a test. There's no cookie cutter formula here. You have to surrender, you have to trust the communication, you have to just release whatever is being presented to you. So every aspect, every journey becomes from that lens. But spiritualism kept me evolving, because I had to separate myself, work on myself, take a little blade and keep chipping away my threads to say, you know, wherever I'm moving, it's bringing me peace. It's not taking me into despair. It's not taking me into frustration. It's not challenging me. But it's giving me strength to know there is life after death, and I continually have the proof of what that is like. Sometimes through my own family members, sometimes with the beautiful loved ones that I get to work with across the table. But it's a constant reminder where I am, the continuity of life does exist. There is more to it than we can explain in a simple language, so that wonderment, the W, the wonderment continues within the aspect of growth in spiritualism, because the mind and the heart is always wondering what's next. And in an actual psychological human form, we are always wondering about what's tomorrow. I'm sure today, some of us are wondering what's for lunch, or what's for dinner, or who is cooking dinner? Am I the one going to go home and cook the dinner, or is somebody else going to do it for me? So the wonderment always happens, right? Now, I will bring in my story for a little moment. I really got interested in photography lately, so I carry a camera, but I still don't know if it's awkward to just pull outside of the road and take a picture, or I need a permission of somebody in front of me, like, can I take your picture, or should I just go about it? So that wonderment always never ceases. It's always going. It's always moving. You know, life is always moving. So is the spirit in the spirit world. So that wonderment and the excitement never stops. So to make a wonderful story, what I would say is that we'll have to go back to the M in the alphabet. Spiritualism was a movement. It still is to this date. And the movement is the struggle, the stress, the satisfaction, the simplicity of communicating with those that have passed on. So it's a movement. So to be able to tell our stories, we have to keep moving. The moment we go into the S of stagnation, we will sort of simmer down and disappear. So that's a part of that journey, is to tell the story. And how you create your story, it's your choice. And we, in our belief system, harp about free will and free choice, that we are creating our story. And how do we progress with that plot is in our discretion. Sometimes it's difficult to get out of that plot. Trust me, it is. And that's where I was finding my religious journey to step out from that knowing what I've always known for 30 years before I started to really take on this part. Some days I would just sit in sadness and just like, what am I doing? Am I on the right track? And I always surrender. The S of our life is to surrender, and I knew Spirit will provide me the answer, the response, what I need to know. So every time, anytime, even to this day, if I'm in a difficult spot, I do the best I can, push it as far as I can go. And then I know, if I can't take it any further, then I need to surrender. You know, path of least resistance in some ways. You don't have to push on things all the time. You know, I learned something at my work. One day I was having a difficult time resolving something. All I heard gently is just step back, let it be. Don't go and help that person. Against the nature of professional environment. About 5 minutes later, you got the phone call, oh, I figured it out. Right? We all have gone through those parts. The moment we stop pushing and surrender and relax into whatever it needs to be, something clicks in and things just work out. So that's the wonderment part of it, you know. Are we pushing into ourselves in oblivion, or are we making sense of it all? Honestly, we don't really have to make sense of it all because it never will make sense of it. You have to just keep moving. That's the part, is keep moving. Keep your story moving. Keep taking the next step forward, even if it's a small step. But that's the big part of it. So through the history of spiritualism, even to this point, those that are dedicated to it, those that believe and have enriched themselves with it, continue to move forward. Now, once again, if I shift slightly this way, I can see a different reason to move forward. And if I go that way, I may get to see a different reason to move forward. But then it is again your vantage point, how you perceive and receive what you need to understand. And I can, or others like me, can only take us so far, but then everything becomes your journey, right? And that's a part of the beauty, is my teachers, my influencers in this religion brought me to a point where I had the choice to take the next steps on. And I had to create my own movement. I still am. I am always moving somewhere, interacting in some way, shape, or form. But the part is, if you're embracing this aspect of spiritualism, yes, you may have a specific need, a specific reason to engage with. But if it's calling your name to take it a step further, are you ready for it? Are you willing to give it that small step forward? And that's a question to ask. Why am I here? What am I doing with this? And the part of inspiring yourself is to continue to ask that question. Just yesterday, I said the same thing. I remind myself every 6-7 weeks. Am I on the right path? Is my heart is in the right place? Is my intentions is in place? And there's always a renewal of vows within me and spiritualism in some ways. Am I doing this for the right reason? And I have to just pay attention. Once again, you push that question and listen beyond that point. And the journey of you is the same thing. Wherever you are in your life, if you are happy where you are, enjoy it. If you are happy for too long, continue to enjoy it. Don't try to question when it's going to stop. Because the moment you ask that question, it does come to a halt in some ways. And that's your own recognition. Don't ask that question. And that's how I've also learned the wrong way. If I'm having a wonderful moment, I need to savor it as long as it's lasting instead of worrying about what's going to happen the next moment. I don't know. Nobody knows that answer. So you enjoy it. Don't question that part of the journey. That's why the beautiful saying is, you know, make hay while the sun shines. Just good old saying. Sometimes they're like little encouraging tools. But Spirit also leaves us with a lot of tools, a lot of homework to work with, a lot of things to ponder about. And I'm sure everybody that is in this room, whoever has lost a family member, a loved one, would have known not every passing was an easy passing. Not every passing was an expected, anticipated passing. There is trauma, there is tragedy in some of the passing. And what is it teaching you? Just the grief, the sadness, the pain? Or there is a story in that passing in its own? And you have to understand that from that journey of your own story within that story. See, and I recall, and this is wonderful, my grandfather had a situation that he couldn't talk. And I had no clue of spiritualism at that point, but I was sensitive in some ways, empath, if you would call it. And I could see his struggle in that journey that he wanted to talk, he wanted to say, but he couldn't say what he wanted to say. But you have to understand that part of the journey that soul took on for the very short amount of time. It still is a recall sometimes. Now I can feel different emotions than what I was observing, because I didn't know what to make the sense of it. I didn't know how to separate that. But as a story, within that story is, I was present watching his story unfold in his own way. And my story was to be an observer at that time, because children back home didn't used to have voice. You know, the good old saying, you speak only when you're spoken to. But that was a big thing. But I perhaps is bringing a little stories out of your own minds to investigate how are you creating your story today. Because some of those definitions are not relevant. And that's another part of what I feel coming into this time and age with spiritualism is, are we keeping ourselves relevant? Right? Some of the universal laws are always going to be the same. But some laws encourage evolvement. Some laws say you need to grow. And the law of growth itself is, if you're not growing, you're hitting a plateau. You don't know how to break the barrier. And perhaps that's where the idea is. You push it so far and then you step back. Is, if you want me to grow, give me a way. Find me a cue. Put me in a motion somewhere. And with that being said, as I see this STUVW, you have to understand this volunteerism, even today's day, in this organization, all organizations across the board, there's a heavy stress on volunteering. There's tremendous demand to uphold the structure. There's a tremendous demand of providing the services. And some of this work, most of this work comes through volunteering. And the part of it is why somebody is volunteering. For some it is a duty, for some it is a service. Once again, you go into one of the S's. Spiritualism is a lot about service. You're serving the humans here and the departed loved ones there. But within the volunteerism, that S is about the servitude. It's about serving. And even though, as I stand in my shoes here, it's a service, regardless of what it is. It is a service. And you have to understand the part of nurturing that comes within that serving has a tone of its own, has a frequency of its own, has a click of its own. And you would know if you're volunteered anytime, anywhere, through your heart, not through your mind, you would know what it feels like. There's a different nurturing in being there with somebody, doing without a reason. But if you've done something through your thought and your mind, there is satisfaction in it. There's a story in it now. But when you're doing it from within, then it's a journey of a different quality. So that volunteering is always a big part of spiritualism, because that's how it is. We do understand life has to work in a certain order, but in a big nature, most of this is volunteer work. So what you see in this square is a presentation that you get to see. But what goes behind this square has a lot of volunteer hours there. A lot of volunteer blood and sweat is there. And it's not just this organization, most every organization has that. That is a spiritual kind. So appreciating volunteering is just simply as appreciating the you within that mixture of that big energy. You know, how often we have seen in our life, as I bring this to a close, that you within us just simply needs to be seen, let alone recognized. I see you, and I'm present with you. And often that doesn't get touched in, but that's a part of, not just spiritualism, just part of human respect and value that I feel have seen through my journey of 13, 17 years into spiritualism, has just allowed me to step back and see, can I see myself, and can I see somebody that is in front of me? You know, maybe my box doesn't fit every other box. Maybe their box is something that I cannot comprehend. And sometimes I have to understand that. It's just the way life is set up. But as you go through this next few days, just recognize the you. And you could find yourself in your thoughts, in your mind, in your heart. And if you can't find yourself anywhere, go find a mirror, you'll find yourself there. And if you can't find yourself in the mirror, that's a bigger question there. That you needs to be seen, recognized, appreciated. Because I can do it all day long, you might feel good with it, but unless you learn to appreciate yourself, this journey is really not going anywhere. So within that journey of spiritualism, personal responsibility, our principle number 7, taking ownership of your journey. It is just you can go about that 7th principle day and night, and it can have a long conversation, but that you, in you, needs to be appreciated and recognized no matter where you are in your life's journey. Nothing more, nothing less. So as I finish this off by STUVW, so as a spiritualist, I thank you for volunteering here to be present in this wonderment of our conversation. Thank you.